Jack Thompson stood in the hallway of Galactic Federation Academy, trying his best not to look out of place. It wasn't easy being the only human in a school filled with beings that looked like they'd been sketched by a sci-fi artist on hallucinogens. "Watch it, Deathworlder," gurgled a gelatinous blob as it oozed around him. The blob, his roommate Quip, was actually one of the few friends Jack had made since arriving 3 months ago. "You're blocking premium hallway real estate with those rigid appendages of yours." "Good morning to you too, Quip," Jack said, rolling his eyes. "And they're called legs. Most species have them." "Most species aren't from planets with crushing gravity and toxic atmospheres," Quip replied. "You Earth types are just built different, as you say." Jack sighed. He'd grown tired of explaining that Earth wasn't actually that bad. Sure, it had higher gravity than most inhabited planets, and yes, the atmosphere contained oxygen, a corrosive gas to some species, but it wasn't the hellscape everyone made it out to be. "We've got biology with Vexlor first," Quip bubbled excitedly, changing the subject. "Word around the ventilation ducts is he's bringing something special today." As they entered the classroom, Professor Vexlor stood at the front, his 6 tentacles arranging holographic displays. The professor was Octavian, a species renowned for their scientific minds and dramatic teaching methods. "Welcome, students of diverse biochemical makeup," Professor Vexlor announced, his voice translating through the universal communicators everyone wore. "Today begins our unit on predator-prey relationships across galactic ecosystems." Jack settled into his reinforced desk, designed to hold his unusually dense human frame. Beside him, Zendra clicked her mandibles in greeting as she took her seat. The insectoid genius had taken a liking to Jack after he'd helped her understand the concept of human humor. "I have procured," Professor Vexlor continued, his voice dropping dramatically, "a specimen that will demonstrate the pinnacle of evolutionary hunting adaptation." The class buzzed with excitement. All except Jack, who was doodling Earth dogs on his tablet. "Thompson." Professor Vexlor's voice snapped. "Perhaps predators from a death world like yours are commonplace, but I'd appreciate your attention." Jack looked up, surprised to find the entire class staring at him. "Sorry, Professor. What kind of predator are we talking about?" The professor's eye stalks quivered with excitement. "Only the most efficient hunter from the Nexilian system, a creature so feared that most sentient species evacuate planets when one is detected." "Cool," Jack said with all the enthusiasm of someone who'd been told they were having peas for dinner. And that was Jack Thompson's life at Galactic High, forever underwhelming his alien peers with his apparent nonchalance toward the universe's deadliest phenomena. Little did they know, Earth had prepared him for more than they could imagine. Section 2, the Apex Predator Project. The next day, the classroom had been transformed. The standard desks had been pushed against the walls, and a large, reinforced containment field occupied the center of the room. Security drones hovered near the ceiling, their sensors trained on the empty field. "Today," Professor Vexlor announced, his tentacles quivering with barely contained excitement, "we will observe the hunting patterns of the Nexilian slasher." A collective gasp rippled through the classroom. Even Quip, who normally maintained a gelatinous poker face, paled to a translucent white. "Is he serious?" Jack whispered to Zendra, whose exoskeleton had taken on a distinctly ashen hue. "The Nexilian slasher is classified as a Category 9 predator," Zendra replied, her mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "They're banned on 87% of inhabited worlds. My third brood cousin was on a mining vessel that picked up a juvenile slasher by mistake. They had to jettison 3 cargo holds before they contained it." Professor Vexlor was now displaying holographic footage of the creature. It resembled a cross between a velociraptor and a scorpion, with a sleek, chitinous exoskeleton and wickedly curved talons. 6 eyes dotted its elongated head, and a barbed tail arched over its back. The slasher hunts using a combination of infrared sensing, echolocation, and chemical receptors so sensitive they can detect fear pheromones from 2 kilometers away. the professor explained. Their neural pathways are dedicated almost entirely to hunting and killing. They're essentially nature's perfect predator. Perfect is a stretch, Jack muttered, earning horrified looks from his classmates. Whip oozed closer to Jack. Only a Deathworlder would critique an apex predator like it's a subpar homework assignment. I'm just saying, Jack shrugged. Everything has weaknesses. Professor Vexlor continued, the specimen will arrive tomorrow in a stasis field. We will observe its behavior using remote drones and supplied prey simulations. This is a unique opportunity. Most of you will never see a live slasher in your lifetimes. And live to tell about it, someone added, triggering nervous laughter. After class, Jack found himself surrounded by curious classmates in the cafeteria. Normally, they kept their distance partly out of fear of his Deathworld strength and partly because humans were still relatively new to the Galactic Federation. Is it true humans hunt for sport? Asked Drellix, a gas-based student who floated in a containment suit. Some do, Jack admitted, picking at his specially prepared Earth-compatible food. But most of us just go to supermarkets like normal people. What's the deadliest predator on Earth? Asked another student. Jack considered this. Statistically, mosquitoes. Or humans, depending on how you look at it. This answer was met with confused silence. Quip interjected, I've been researching Earth. They have these tiny creatures called honey badgers that are absolutely insane. They fight venomous snakes for fun. Playing cats, added Zendra. Domesticated predators that humans keep in their sleeping quarters. Jack smiled. My mom has 3 cats. One of them, Mr. Whiskers, once brought down a drone that flew too close to our property. The alien students exchanged glances. They never quite knew when Jack was joking or deadly serious. And that was exactly how Jack liked it. Section 3. The disaster unfolds. The day of the demonstration arrived with a level of security that made Jack feel like he was back at Earth's lunar embassy. Drone guards hovered at every entrance, and a force field technician was running final checks on the containment area. Is all this really necessary? Jack asked Zendra as they took their seats. The Academy's insurance policy requires it, she replied. Last year, Professor Vexlor brought in a harmless flowering plant from Rigel 7. 3 students were hospitalized with hallucinogenic pollen exposure. One of them thought he was a space elevator for 2 days. Professor Vexlor floated to the center of the classroom, tentacles raised dramatically. Students, prepare yourselves for a moment of scientific revelation. He gestured to a hovering platform that entered through a specialized airlock. On it sat a shimmering cube, inside which a dark shape remained perfectly still. The Nexilian slasher, the professor announced, currently in stasis. When I activate the transition protocol, the stasis field will dissolve, and the creature will be contained within our classroom barrier. Jack leaned forward despite himself. The creature was smaller than he'd expected, about the size of a large dog, but its stillness held a coiled energy that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Evolution had instilled humans with an innate ability to recognize efficient predators, and Jack's instincts were screaming. Commencing transition in 3, 2, 1. The stasis cube shimmered and disappeared. For a moment, the slasher remained motionless in the center of the containment field. Then its 6 eyes blinked open simultaneously. Notice the vertical pupil structure, Professor Vexlor commented, evolved for precise depth perception when. The rest of his sentence was lost as the slasher suddenly launched itself at the containment field with shocking speed. A crackling sound filled the air as it collided with the invisible barrier. Perfectly normal testing behavior, the professor assured the class as several students scooted their chairs backward. It's establishing the boundaries of its new environment. The slasher circled the perimeter, its movements fluid and calculated. It paused occasionally to scratch at the barrier with its talons, leaving faint energy marks that quickly dissipated. Now I'll introduce a simple prey simulation, Professor Vexlor said, manipulating controls on his tablet. A small holographic creature appeared in the containment field. The slasher's reaction was immediate. It dropped into a hunting crouch so fast Jack barely saw the transition. The predator's tail arched higher, its barb glistening with what Jack assumed was venom. That's when the lights flickered. Minor power fluctuation, the professor said, though Jack noticed his tentacles had tensed. The lights flickered again, and this time the containment field visibly wavered. The slasher froze, all 6 eyes fixed on the barely perceptible disruption. "Professor," the force field technician called out, "we're getting some feedback in the system. I recommend." A loud pop interrupted him as a power surge ripped through the classroom. The lights went out completely for 3 seconds. When they came back on, Jack noticed 2 things immediately. The containment field was down, and the slasher was gone. Chaos erupted. Students scrambled in all directions, some climbing walls, others oozing under desks or taking flight. Professor Vexlor's voice boomed through the emergency system, "Remain calm. Security protocols are activating." But the security drones had also malfunctioned, spinning uselessly near the ceiling. A high-pitched scream drew Jack's attention to a corner where the slasher had cornered a crystalline student named Prism. The predator was advancing slowly, its hunting instincts clearly identifying the most vulnerable target. Without thinking, Jack grabbed his reinforced metal chair and shouted, "Hey, over here." "None." The slasher's head swiveled toward him, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "Thompson, don't be foolish," Professor Vexlor called out, having retreated to the relative safety of his hovering platform. But Jack knew what he was doing. At least he hoped he did. Section 4. Earth Survival Tactics. As the slasher turned its attention to Jack, time seemed to slow down. It wasn't his first face-off with a predator, though admittedly, Earth Mountain lions weren't quite as exotic as alien death beasts. Growing up in rural Montana had its advantages. Jack had spent summers helping his grandfather track wildlife, winters surviving blizzards that could freeze exposed skin in minutes, and all seasons dealing with whatever the harsh Earth environment threw at them. His grandfather's words echoed in his head, "Respect predators, but remember they're just trying to survive, same as you." The slasher stalked toward Jack, its movements calculated and efficient. Jack maintained eye contact while his mind raced through options. The classroom had limited resources, but he wasn't without tools. "Quip," Jack whispered to his gelatinous friend who was hiding under a nearby desk. "I need a distraction in exactly 30 seconds. "Have you lost your carbon-based mind?" Quip bubbled nervously. "Trust me. 30 seconds, make a splash by the door." Jack slowly backed toward the lab storage cabinets, keeping his movements deliberate. The slasher followed, its attention locked on him. From the corner of his eye, Jack could see Professor Vexlor frantically working to restore the security systems while the other students watched in horror from various hiding spots. "What's it doing?" Zendra whispered from her perch on the ceiling. "It's just watching you." "Assessing," Jack replied quietly. "Predators don't waste energy. It's figuring out if I'm worth the effort." Jack reached the cabinet and, maintaining eye contact with the slasher, felt behind him for the handle. The creature tensed, sensing his intent. "Now, Quip," Jack shouted. On cue, Quip propelled himself across the room, splashing dramatically against the far wall. The slasher's head whipped around at the sudden movement, and Jack seized his opportunity. He yanked open the cabinet and grabbed 2 items, a canister of emergency flame suppressant and a metal specimen tray. The slasher, realizing it had been tricked, spun back toward Jack with frightening speed. But Jack was ready. He discharged the flame suppressant directly into the creature's face, creating a cloud of fine particles that clung to its sensory organs. The slasher shrieked, a sound like metal scraping on metal, as its primary hunting senses were temporarily overwhelmed. Its infrared sensors and chemical receptors are linked. Jack called out to the astonished class. "Overload 1, disrupt them all." While the creature clawed at its face, Jack banged the metal tray repeatedly against the cabinet, creating a disorienting cacophony of sounds that further confused the predator's echolocation. "Thompson, what are you doing?" Professor Vexlor called out. "Creating sensory overload," Jack explained, continuing his improvised noise attack. "Most predators rely on fine-tuned senses. Overwhelm those, and they can't function effectively." The slasher was now moving erratically, its deadly precision replaced by confusion. Jack noticed the chemical storage unit in the corner of the room and formulated the next phase of his plan. "Zendra, can you reach the ceiling vent above the chemical storage?" The insectoid student clicked her mandibles nervously but nodded. "When I give the signal, I need you to release the locking mechanism." Zendra scuttled across the ceiling while Jack continued his noise distraction. The slasher was beginning to recover, shaking its head to clear the suppressant from its sensory organs. "Everyone else move to the far side of the room," Jack instructed. Then, louder now, "Zendra." Zendra released the vent lock, and Jack immediately threw his metal tray with precision, hitting the emergency flush button on the chemical storage unit. Decontamination foam sprayed from ceiling nozzles, covering that section of the classroom in thick, rapidly hardening material. The slasher, still disoriented, moved directly into the foam's path. Within seconds, the foam began to solidify around its legs and tail, effectively immobilizing it. The creature thrashed and screeched, but each movement only embedded it more deeply in the quick hardening substance. "Containment foam," Jack explained to the amazed onlookers. "Works on grizzly bears too, though we don't usually keep it in classroom ceilings back home." Section 5. The human is scarier. The slasher, partially immobilized but far from neutralized, focused all 6 of its eyes on Jack. With a strength that defied its trapped condition, it wrenched one leg free from the hardening foam and slashed toward him, missing by centimeters. "It's still dangerous," Professor Vexlor warned from a safe distance. "The containment team is 7 minutes out." "We might not have 7 minutes," Jack replied, eyeing the predator as it worked to free its second limb. The slasher let out a low, rattling sound, a hunting call that sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. Even Jack felt primal fear rise within him. But years of Earth survival training had taught him to use fear, not succumb to it. "I need something conductive," Jack said, scanning the room. "Zendra, those mineral samples by your station, are any of them metallic?" "The Kelvian samples are highly conductive," she confirmed, already understanding his plan. With impressive accuracy, she tossed a fist-sized metallic rock toward Jack, who caught it one-handed. The watching aliens murmured in amazement at the casual display of coordination. Most species required assistive technology for such feats. The slasher had now freed a second limb and was working on a third, its movements becoming more frantic as the foam continued to harden. Jack knew he had to act quickly. "Everyone stay back," he warned, approaching the partially trapped predator. "Thompson, this is madness," Professor Vexlor protested. "That creature can sever limbs with a single strike." Jack ignored the warning, circling the slasher with measured steps. The predator tracked his movement, its tail straining against the foam to no avail. When Jack was positioned exactly where he wanted to be, he made his move. With shocking speed that left the alien observers gasping, Jack feinted to one side. When the slasher lunged with its free claw, missing him by inches, Jack pivoted and slammed the conductive mineral directly against the creature's neural cluster, a small, exposed section at the base of its skull that he had identified from the professor's earlier holographic display. The effect was immediate. The slasher went rigid, its nervous system temporarily overloaded by the mineral's natural electromagnetic properties. Taking advantage of its momentary paralysis, Jack grabbed a nearby lab jacket and wrapped it around the creature's snapping jaws, creating a makeshift muzzle. "Someone get me some binding material," Jack called out, maintaining pressure on the neural cluster while restraining the predator's head. Quip oozed forward with a length of carbon fiber cable normally used for lab experiments. With practiced efficiency, Jack secured the slasher's jaws and free limbs, effectively rendering it harmless until the containment team arrived. When he finally stepped back, sweating but triumphant, he became aware of the absolute silence in the room. Every alien student and even Professor Vexlor were staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "What?" Jack asked, wiping his hands on his pants. "You," Professor Vexlor's voice trembled slightly. "You physically engaged with an Exilian slasher. With your bare hands." "Well, I had the rock," Jack shrugged. "Do all humans possess such capabilities?" asked a student from the back. Jack considered this. "Most humans probably wouldn't try this specific approach," he admitted. "But we're pretty adaptable in crises. My sister once fought off a mountain lion with a selfie stick." The looks of horror intensified. "What exactly is this Earth of yours?" Professor Vexlor asked quietly, as though reconsidering everything he thought he knew about human homeworlds. "Just a planet," Jack replied with a hint of a smile. "A bit wet, a bit rocky. Good coffee. Decent predators." Section 6. Reputation Reframed. Word of Jack's encounter with the Nexilian slasher spread through the Academy faster than a quantum transmission. By the next morning, the story had evolved to claim he'd wrestled the creature bare-handed while reciting Earth poetry. Jack didn't bother correcting anyone. The truth was strange enough. As he entered the cafeteria, conversation halted. Then, to his surprise, several students from species that had previously avoided him gestured to an empty seat at their table. "Is this a prank?" Jack whispered to Quip as they approached. "It's far worse," Quip replied. "It's respect." Professor Vexlor had called an assembly to address the incident, as the administration was referring to it. The entire student body packed the auditorium, with Jack reluctantly seated in the front row. "Yesterday's events," the professor began, his tentacles uncharacteristically still, "have prompted a reevaluation of our safety protocols." He paused, eye stalks turning toward Jack. "They have also prompted a reevaluation of our understanding of human capabilities." A holographic display activated, showing footage from the classroom's security cameras. Jack watched himself in action, noticing how calm he appeared despite the internal panic he'd actually felt. Mr. Thompson demonstrated crisis management skills that even our advanced defense courses don't cover, Professor Vexlor continued. His actions saved lives and prevented significant damage to Academy property. Jack shifted uncomfortably as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. As a result, the Xenobiology Department has requested permission to update the classification of Earth in our galactic database. A ripple of excitement passed through the audience. Earth will now be classified as a Class 9 death world, and humans as a sentinel species of significant scientific interest. After the assembly, Jack found himself surrounded by curious classmates. "Is it true humans intentionally ingest neurotoxins for pleasure?" one asked. "You mean alcohol?" "Kind of, yeah." "And you allow smaller predators to live in your dwellings?" Jack smiled, pulling up a holographic image on his communicator. "This is Mr. Whiskers, my mom's cat. He's technically a predator, but mostly he sleeps and demands food." The alien students leaned in, studying the image of the ordinary tabby cat with expressions of fascination and horror. "Your mother keeps this creature near her while she sleeps?" one whispered. "Sometimes he sleeps on her face," Jack confirmed, enjoying their reactions. As the crowd dispersed, Zendra approached with Quip oozing alongside her. "Your social status has increased by approximately 87%, she informed him. You're now considered the third most interesting entity in the Academy, after the quantum singularity in the physics lab and the lunch lady. Great, Jack sighed. Just what I wanted. His communicator buzzed an incoming call from Earth. Jack stepped aside to answer it, his mother's face appearing on the holographic display. Hi, sweetie. How's space school? It's fine, Mom. Had a little excitement yesterday, but nothing major. That's nice, dear. Listen, Mr. Whiskers got into your room again and knocked over that model solar system. I think he ate Venus. Jack laughed, drawing curious looks from passing alien students. Cats will be cats, Mom. Oh, and your father says to remind you about hibernation season coming up. Don't forget your vitamin D supplements since that school doesn't have proper sunlight. I won't forget, Jack promised, suddenly missing the familiar dangers and comforts of Earth. As he ended the call, Jack noticed Professor Vexlor hovering nearby, clearly having overheard the conversation. Your species hibernates? The professor asked incredulously. No, Jack replied with a perfectly straight face. We just say that to confuse aliens. As he walked away, Jack could hear the professor frantically taking notes behind him, and he couldn't help but smile. Maybe being the resident Deathworlder wasn't so bad after all. At least it kept things interesting. After all, compared to Earth with its unpredictable weather, diverse predators and teenagers on social media, an exilian slasher was just another Tuesday afternoon.